Good evening, this is Atmospheric Alex here with yet another severe weather outlook and discussion video as we are in the midst of a multi-day event of severe weather across the Great Plains and even portions of Dixie Alley as well. To start off today's video, we're going to look at our Storm Prediction Center brought to you from WeatherWise here. We are talking about 2 enhanced risk areas today, 3 out of 5s on the severe weather scale. The first one here is going to have to be located in Oklahoma, portions of northern Texas, and in the Panhandle. And the second one here is across portions of Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama. This one over here, in my opinion, would have your greatest tornado potential, and we're going to take a look at that right now. As you can see, we do have a 5% risk within 25 miles of a given point in both of these risk areas. But the one out here, we are talking about potential supercell growth and development later this evening. We'll get into that in just a little bit. Your wind risk here, you're definitely talking about potentially a Boeing segment of storms here, possibly producing upwards of 80-mile-an-hour winds later on this evening into the overnight hours. And of course, your hail risk, again, supercells of form, 2 to 3 plus inch diameter hail would be likely with those. Could we see a 4-inch diameter hailstone? We'll have to wait and see. Moving into tomorrow, we didn't move much at all, did we? We're still talking about a fairly large, slight 2 out of 5 risk on the severe weather scale here for portions of central Texas into Louisiana and Arkansas. And this for sure will include the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area right within here. So again, they have been under the gun and had a target on their back for the past several days now. I'm kind of losing track as we speak, but just tons of severe weather out there. And as we go into our tornado risk, not talk about much, this could definitely get upgraded. I really do think a 5% is possible with a threat for more supercells tomorrow. And for our wind risk, just a fairly large 15%, nothing to write home about. Your hail risk, well, that'll probably be expanded as well, but for now we are talking about a small area near San Angelo and Abilene with a potential for a very large hail. Now for your day 3 risk, this is going to be heading on into Tuesday, I do believe. We're talking about a very tiny slight risk. Again, I do expect upgrades to be done to some of these risk areas in here, especially Dixie Alley. We may see some stuff back here. We're just going to have to wait and see, but I do think these days will continue to uptrend as we get closer to them. Now, as we go through the rest of this afternoon, the evening, and the overnight hours, there's going to be a lot going on here. So we're going to be talking about storms kind of firing up here, going in around 3 to 5 p.m. Central. Look at that around Amarillo and Lubbock, Texas there. Big old supercell popping off. We have other supercells even developing back here in New Mexico as well that we're really going to have to watch out for. Then Arkansas. We'll get to all that, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and eastward in just a little bit. I'm trying to break this down as much as possible. And our time frame is going to skip a little bit, not entirely sure why. But as we get into around 4 to 6 p.m. or 4 to 5 p.m. Central to be more exact, talking about a ton of large supercellular growth and development across Amarillo and Lubbock, Texas. Like I said before, more supercells going down along a chain going into Midland, Texas, down to San Angelo, and these definitely could produce very large hail and tornadoes with them. We're going to really have to be monitoring that as we go later on today. And you can see these supercells really becoming invigorated here, and especially these ones further south near Midland. Like I keep on saying, that chain right there, definitely going to be talking about large hail concerns. This here will likely begin to gust out a little bit as we head into around 6 to 8 p.m. Central. And you'll see that demonstrated well here. Look at that, all congeals into one big line heading through Wichita Falls there. And look at Dallas getting absolutely hammered here as we go into 12 to 2 a.m. tonight. Abilene, maybe another round moving in, maybe for Lubbock as well. Just a ton of severe weather going on across northern and central Texas and even western Texas. But look at this, definitely a flooding risk, and this continues to move on off to the east, impacting Waco, Tyler, Shreveport here, Texarkana, getting into around 3 to 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So a very big line of storms that could produce upwards of 80 plus mile-an-hour destructive winds with it, and that'll just continue to move on through. How about for Oklahoma here? Well, we're going to take our clock straight on through here. And we're going to look here going in around 5 to 7 p.m. Central tonight. And we are talking about this model in particular, the HRRR, showing a ton of semi-discrete supercells popping up near the OKC metro area and off to the northwest. There's a lot of uncertainties about this, so believe it or not, it is not a forecast. But if we do see these supercells form, they could be in a very energized environment. And look at this one here, just off to the southeast of OKC, and another one. This is a very intense storm. This one over here, this one right here, very large hail concerns, and even, I couldn't even fully rule a brief, strong tornado risk as well with those supercells, especially if they remain as discrete as this model is projecting. And those will begin to cluster up going in around 10 to 12 tonight, and that is when things will become very messy, and we're talking about a very loud and hectic night ahead for southern Oklahoma and southeastern Oklahoma. And to be totally honest, this whole area has been a major hot zone for severe weather this spring, so tornado risk will probably be a bit heightened here, I could only imagine. So you do need to turn emergency alerts on your phone and crank your weather radios on high so you can get woken up if a tornado warning gets issued tonight. And that pushes on through. Moving on through into Arkansas here, you can see a ton of storms trying to fire up across southern Little Rock, Pine Bluff, going into Memphis. But you can see it begins to cluster up a bit. We get some of these segments here of severe weather pushing on through like this, going into around 4 to 7 p.m. Central into, say, Little Rock, Memphis here. Could end up seeing some activity, and then pushing further off to the south, could see a pretty big line of storms pushing through portions of Alabama and Mississippi here, which we're going to move into here in a minute. But don't get too caught up yet. Look at Colorado here. It's very random, but up near Denver, we could see an isolated tornado risk here as we move throughout the afternoon into the evening. I'd like to note we have a couple of boundaries setting up right here, pushing on off to the west, and we have a ton of supercells trying to fire here off the Rockies, moving east. What's going to happen when the two clash together? Your tornado risk could get heightened. So we're seeing a 2% risk area up here for tornadoes. I wouldn't be shocked if that gets a little bit upped further. You could definitely see here your tornado risk moving on through into around 3 to 6 p.m. Mountain Time out here in those areas. Okay, now we're finally going to talk about Mississippi and Alabama. Storms could be firing up in the northern side of the states here and pushing south. Look at some of these Boeing segments I'd like to note. Could see scattered gusts upwards of 75 miles an hour out of a couple of those segments. Not exactly a forecast, but it's definitely a possibility. And definitely moving across Birmingham here, could see quite a bit of wind moving on through into 7 to 10 p.m. Central to even Eastern time tonight. And then again, pushing further south and beginning to weaken with time. Your line kind of starts up here, sags south further and gets larger, but begins to weaken as it does so, as it moves into a less favorable environment for severe weather. Some parts of it still staying together here, kind of near the Montgomery areas. We're just going to have to wait and see. Your parameters go like this. There's so much going on today, so I'm going to try and break this down for you. Your supercells that form out in Texas, where you can see some of your orange and red colors, so definitely suitable for supercells. Then across Oklahoma here, as we go into tonight, definitely looking quite favorable into, again, your oranges and reds for sure, going to be looking at that. Further off to the south across portions of western Texas, if we see another round of storms, could also be a bit significant. As these cluster up into one giant line moving into the overnight hours, you begin to see some pretty cranking wind shear here out ahead of this line. If we see any curly cues, any kind of Boeing segments or hook features in this line, you could definitely see a few tornadoes being possible here. Going further off to the east into Mississippi and Alabama, some localized areas. Like I said, 70 plus mile an hour gusts along that line moving southward tonight definitely is going to be a risk. You can see your supercell ingredients very maximized there in coverage and then dies out later tonight. Well, how about tomorrow? Well, it'll be a bit easier to understand. You can see your gigantic line pushing through Austin, Lufkin, Shreveport, Alexandria, going up to around Little Rock, heading on through into 8 to 11 a.m. Central Time tomorrow morning. That continues to push on through, and then you could see some storm development. Look at that, kind of down near Austin here, Houston, Dallas getting in on another round of severe weather stuff in Oklahoma. We'll talk about that later. Midland, San Angelo, just a ton of supercells firing up everywhere with potentially an all hazards threat, especially after 6 to 7 p.m. Central Time. But you could definitely see those moving on through. And take a look at this barrage of cells out near San Angelo, Texas here. Definitely could be talking about very large hail with those cells there pushing through around 6 to 8 p.m. Central, and my goodness, a barrage of strong, intense supercells really ramps up down here. San Antonio, Austin, Texas, and you could see maybe a brief, strong tornado risk. If any of those cells latch on to any boundaries, if there's any weird interactions that happen down there that are fully mesoscale, we're going to watch for that very large hail pushing through San Antonio. My goodness, that could possibly be occurring around 9 to 12 tomorrow night. And then that could bow into a line, could see up to 80 mile an hour gusts along stuff like that forms. More supercells back off to the west, another line here. So much activity going on. And then big old Boeing line pushes through Houston, Lake Charles. This is not a forecast, but we're going to have to really monitor our model trend. How about across Oklahoma here? Some supercells and just kind of messy clustered cells begin to fire off with a hail and wind risk. Not much of a tornado risk with those. And then again, just kind of a messy look going into the overnight hours. Across Arkansas here, you see our morning round moving through, and you can see it here, especially across Mississippi and Alabama. This model sector is not working for some reason. I do apologize, but believe me, you could have some winds moving through there as we head into tomorrow afternoon, and you could see it pushing through, continuing with time. How about your ingredients here? I sound like a broken record at this point. I would like to note some heightened supercell composite parameters across your line, blasting through Mississippi and Alabama tomorrow afternoon. That's something to really watch. But further south, look at this here. Very elevated reds, hot pinks down here where those strong to intense supercells fire off, going to tomorrow evening. That is where you could see an isolated strong tornado risk really get underway. Look at those supercells there, taking up quite a favorable environment. So really going to have to be on alert tomorrow. Again, turn on emergency alerts and blast your weather radios. This could be a bit of a nocturnal risk, especially going later in time. And then those leave the best environment and die out later on into the night. How about moving into Tuesday, because we're not done yet. I really wish we were. You could see here some cells popping up here across southwest Texas near Sanderson. Alpine could see some supercells. Even across portions of New Mexico. There is a ton of disparities and model disagreement for Tuesday, so everything you're seeing here will definitely change. And then some stuff for Arkansas, Louisiana, further east, but there is nothing that is set in stone. So nothing is a forecast moving into Tuesday, unfortunately. That line there was not really modeled by anything else, so that's why we're so uncertain here. You can see here on Tuesday, heightened parameters again out in Mississippi and Alabama. Dixie Alley really getting it here, my goodness. So definitely some severe weather possible there. Could see a slight risk introduced in future outlooks, and then you could see isolated areas of heightened supercell composite parameters are definitely possible going into southwest Texas, going into Tuesday evening into the overnight hours. Really going to have to watch that closely. So how about over the next few days here? Well, we're looking at our GFS model with our simulated reflectivity radar presentation. You could see going into Wednesday, more supercells popping up across southwest Texas into New Mexico as well. And Dixie Alley, again, just seeing more severe weather. So, I mean, goodness, you all have been getting a ton of it this year, I'll tell you what. And you could see more of your severe weather chances going into Thursday. Across Texas again, even across Colorado could see some panhandle magic moving on into Texas here, and then across Dixie Alley still remaining very active, so multiple days of severe weather upcoming for your neck of the woods. Moving on into Friday, could see lower storm energy but supercell potential across the Rocky Mountains here and off your front range areas. and that is just not a forecast. Moving it on to Saturday, not a forecast. Could see supercells again popping up in Texas and along your Front Range rocky areas here. After this becomes a massive blur, so really not focusing in on your details just yet. And with that being said, thank you so much for tuning into today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm almost running out of breath here. We've been talking about a lot, haven't we? I've been trying to break things down as much as possible so the public can understand this greatly. And well, I'm probably going to see you all here again soon because the train doesn't stop rolling down the tracks, am I right? And with that said, please be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to my little corner of the weather community, share some friends, family on social media, and you all just stay very weather aware out there and have a wonderful night, everyone.